Welcome to Game Changers Live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. Welcome back to Game Changers Live, everyone. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. We're our top 2% podcast ranked globally by Listen Notes, and you could be a game changer in somebody else's life today. So my guest is Ross Borden today. He's the CEO and founder of Matador Network. It's a leading travel publisher that launched Geek, the personal AI travel assistant. Matador Network is the world's #1 media brand for modern travelers. With more than 14 million followers across social media, Matador has become a leading travel brand through its production of article features, city guides, creator-first content, and original videos. They're a top-ranking travel brand on TikTok, and its videos are viewed more than 180 million times per month. And Ross has lived in a number of places around the world, in Spain, Kenya, and Argentina, and he currently resides in his native San Francisco. So how are you, brother? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Doing great.
Hey, I've been a huge travel fan my entire life. Had an opportunity to live overseas for about 10 years. I went backpacking for 2 months out of college, and it was the best experience of my life. I cannot imagine not having done that. And I remember going back, and we had that big fat book, that travel guide. I forgot what it was called, Fromers or something like that. Yeah, the Fromers guide that you have to, start looking for hostels and all this stuff. And so AI has transformed this completely. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about you and your background and how you, kind of fell in love with traveling and then media publishing. And we'll talk about Matador. So give me a little bit of your background.
Sure. Yeah, not a dissimilar to your history with backpacking. That's kind of where the idea for Matador began. I was exposed to travel at a young age, and by the time I was a teenager, I was very committed to adventure travel. Really like dirtbag adventure travel, doing anything I could to keep traveling. So
Right.
I was like in high school, made it to Spain, ran with the bulls, slept in the park,
Nice. I ran with the Bulls too.
kind of like like no plan. Went studied abroad in Spain. Just pepper. I found out I like a friend of a friend of a friend knew people in Kenya. I sort of peppered these people with emails until they're like, all right, if you stop the emails, you can come work for us in Kenya for the summer. Spent 5 months hitchhiking around East Africa. Went down to climb mountains in Latin America, and that was where, and like it's hard to even remember how old school things were. Not only the Frommer's guide, and to find out where to stay, but in terms of like telling stories of our travels, we were climbing the biggest mountains in South America and having just crazy adventures. And we would go to the internet cafe and like, oh, reporting live from Arequipa, Peru. We just got off this volcano, and that was like mass emails. This is like pre-blogs. Facebook wasn't even around, or maybe it was just for kids with a .edu email address.
Yep.
Um, but there was really no way in the digital world to communicate these stories, and we were literally camped halfway up this volcano, and this storm had just beaten the crap out of us, and we were drying off, and being like, this is just such a crazy adventure we're living. Where is the global community where we can share this story, these photos, and relay
Yeah.
this? And back then it was the internet cafe, sending a mass email to all of our friends and family. But that's where the idea for Matador really began.
Well, and it's interesting because, so how old are you then?
I'm 43,
Okay,
about to
so
be
we're
43. I'm
yeah. So,
42.
but when you were traveling back then in South America, early 20s,
Yeah, I was
right?
20. I let's see. It was straight out of school, so this is like 2003,
Yeah,
2004. I
yeah,
was on that volcano.
yeah. It's funny because I went backpacking in 2001 that summer with my brother, and we had 30 cities in 11 countries, and started off in London and made it all the way down to Turkey and back, and and ran with the bulls in Pamplona, and we ice climb in the Alps and things like that. And you're right, we'd have to go to the internet cafes, send the emails, and try to describe what we experienced. And what was cool though was throughout the backpacking trip you would run into people on trains that then you run into them in other cities, and you're sharing stories like that. But there wasn't that ability to send mass communications and get people to really live kind of what you live, right? Kind of experience it through your eyes. And it's funny because back then it was those disposable cameras. You would take the pictures, you wouldn't know what they looked like until afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's something still super nostalgic about disposable cameras. I just saw a TikTok channel where this guy just goes up to strangers and like, "Are you guys going out to party tonight?" He's like, hands them a disposable camera, and then they get it back to him, and he publishes the photos on TikTok. It's pretty cool
That's
concept.
pretty neat. Pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, it was so analog and so old school. But that sounds like an awesome trip that you took. 30 countries in one
Yeah,
trip,
well, 30 cities,
running
11
with bulls and
countries.
ice climbing. It's awesome.
And I experienced one of the a sense of freedom that I've never experienced before, in the fact that you didn't have any plans. You just kind of show up to a train station, look at the board, see where the trains are going, and then pick a spot and head out. And that rarely happens anymore these days.
Yeah, I mean, I encourage people. I think it's a misconception that you need a lot of money to travel. If you pick the right place, traveling is actually a lot cheaper than staying home, assuming that you live somewhere in a Western country.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think like it's just required education for most people should be some kind of like really cheap budget backpacking trip, because you experience that freedom and you also just learn about the world in a way that you just can't if you're staying in your home country. So
And it's a
highly
bit more
encourage.
difficult, I think, as you get older, right? You get used to some of the creature comforts and the kind of quality travel. And then if you think about going to stay at a hostel when you're in your 40s, well, you won't even be allowed to anyway, right? Because there's an age limit now. Us old
Oh
guys
yeah.
can't stay in those anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to stay at hostels anymore, but I at some point I'm excited to do some kind of like backpacking trip when my son's old enough. I have a 8-year-old son and an 8-month-old daughter, and at some point I'm gonna want to get into some hardcore adventure travel with my son. So
Yeah.
maybe at some point we'll be doing the budget backpacker thing and climbing mountains.
Yeah, absolutely. So you started Matador with, you said $11,000. We were talking before. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any connections to Silicon Valley. I didn't have any experience. I really didn't know what the hell I was doing. I came back from traveling and I got this like soul sucking job, hardcore corporate job, sitting in a cubicle, making 100 cold calls a day, selling database software, and I was just like, what the hell just happened in my life? And I was actually inspired originally by YouTube, because even YouTube, this is before Google, right before Google bought YouTube, when YouTube was first blowing up,
Hmm.
and they were crowdsourcing videos, right? And someone who now works at Matador came over to my cubicle at that corporate job and was like, "Yo, have you heard this new site YouTube? Like people's videos are getting like 25,000 views." And that was like going viral back then, It was like
Yeah,
25,000 views is nothing now, but that was weird. That was a crazy new thing that
it
they were
was.
doing. They're like anyone could upload a video and it could reach a wider audience. So I was like, man, I should do this for travel content. And that was the idea. And that was kind of going back to that volcano in Peru. I was like, this could be the global community of storytelling for travel. And so, yeah, I moved. Luckily, my mom was down to have me. I had to move out of my apartment. I left this corporate job. I moved back home, and I was paying myself $1,000 a month, and I was basically like moved into the under the poverty line to start this company,
Yep.
and started Matter with 11K, and then we just bootstrapped the bejesus. I mean, we bootstrapped this thing as hard as we could and reached profitability. And I think if I look back, it was actually really good that we were such a cash starved business, because if you look at the companies in media that raised so much money, Vice out of business, bankrupt, BuzzFeed complete disaster, there's really not a lot of good stories in terms of there's a company called Mike.com that raised $60 million, went to zero.
Wow.
So, we were forced to create a business model that actually made sense for travel,
Mhm.
and for media, for digital media. And so we did that, and then we reached profitability, and we've grown the team, and now we've got Geek, which is super exciting and kind of like revolutionizing our business as a technology company, which we've never been before. So yeah, it's been it's been a long road, but we're ending in a good place, and things are continuing to be really exciting.
So you have about 85 employees, you said. You've been in business 17 years, and you're right. When you start the business, if you can create a sustainable and predictable business model of cash flows that you know are coming in and it could run on itself, then that makes it even all the more attractive for investors if you need it. But perhaps you won't even need it because it could run on its own, and that's incredibly important for a business.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think like, I'm sure in your audience you have a lot of entrepreneurs and people who want to be entrepreneurs. I would
yeah.
say like we've this last couple years has been really interesting where there's just like been this, when in the ZERP era when like cash was free and there was zero interest, 0% interest rates,
Yep.
you could just raise you like, oh, we're doing 10 million a year and yeah, we're burning through 50 million a year. That somehow made sense a couple of
Yeah.
years ago, and people just keep raising, raising, raising. I think you're seeing now all of that illusion is over. The I'm sure you guys know your audience knows about unicorns, the
Hmm.
billion-dollar valuation private companies. The landscape is now covered with dead unicorns. These
Yeah.
companies that never really made sense. They were never making money. They were ripping through cash,
Yeah.
and so I think and especially with the advent of AI being in the mainstream, you can be a really small team, and it's an incredible tool for bootstrapping. So I think we're back to reality now where a business needs to make sense. It needs to have a sound business model. It needs to actually make money instead of burn money.
Hmm.
And you can have a really small team, and probably more than ever now, the world is really well set up for entrepreneurs to start with almost nothing. I would recommend more than
Absolutely.
11K, but
Yeah.
but I think you can be a really small team. You don't need to raise as much, and you can build something compelling that has a sound business model, and then you can be kind of in control of your own destiny, where you don't need to sell, you don't need to raise, and you can build organically like we have.
And so AI has provided an opportunity for a lot of these small businesses to develop a very niche product, right? We're seeing that in not only in travel, but we're seeing it with doctors, right? It's an AI just only for medicine, an AI for lawyers, an AI for these, specific industries, right? How difficult or how easy was it to build a niche-based AI system?
I mean, I think just a side note, I think like there are niche AIs that like Guide Geek is a niche AI for travel. I think we're going to be one of, if not the winner in the travel space, which we're really excited about. But I think even for entrepreneurs to just do more with less, to code with a co-pilot, to
Right.
create marketing and blog content using AI, you can just have a smaller team. For us, I mean, I was kind of naive going into this, to be honest. We got sort of early access to OpenAI's language model when, this is before the launch of ChatGPT. And I think like
Wow.
most people were like, wow, this is incredibly powerful. We immediately started thinking, what could this mean for travel? Um, but I was also kind of like, we're going to plug this thing in, it's going to work, and it didn't. We were at 15% errors, meaning that out of 100 conversations with the AI, 15 people were having trouble. The AI was getting stuck, or it wasn't understanding them, or it was giving
Right.
information that was not correct, or a place had gone out of business that it had recommended. And so we've been basically in this like 11 months of fixing every single week, fixing bugs, improving the AI. We're now under 3% errors. So 97% of people, 97 out of 100 people are
Yeah.
having flawless conversations with the AI. We're hoping to get under 1%. I don't know if it'll get much better than that. But it has been a long road. And the key for us, the reason that we were able to improve so much so quickly, is that we just launched this, and we it's not an app, so we launched it through WhatsApp and Instagram. and Facebook Messenger, and then it sits on our website on matadornetwork.com. But putting it through these messaging apps that already have billions of users
Yes.
was strategically a
That
good
was
idea.
yeah,
And
that's
then
a game
this gave
changer. I
us
had
like,
never seen it like that.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, and that's, that's the way we wanted it to be delivered. Because if you think about like how you normally get like the best travel advice, it's not from a book. It's not about visiting a bunch of websites. It's like if you have a friend that lives somewhere,
Mhm.
you're like, yo, you've been living in Mexico City for 15 years. Tell me everything. Where should I go eat? Where should I make dinner reservations? Where should we stay? What's the best neighborhood?
Yeah.
And we wanted that experience of just texting a friend to be the experience of Guide Geek, except Guide Geek is that friend that's an expert at literally the entire world. So that's kind of how where we started. And then because we had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of users in the first year, we were able to improve on the product because we had all these like real conversation data to dive into and improve the product.
And that's impressive that it's less than 3% because like you said, businesses go out of, they go under all the time, especially in the travel space, restaurants and clubs and, different spaces that they're recommending. So it's really hard to maintain an accuracy when you're talking about global travel. I mean, there's so many things that could go out of business, but as the model learns, it gets smarter and smarter and gets more accurate, and so that's pretty impressive. So Guide Geek, when I first went on there, I said, oh, okay, WhatsApp or Instagram? Like, how does this work? So then you just kind of figure it out. You go to one of them. I said, just ask a question on WhatsApp. And yep, sure enough. And one of the first things I asked was, okay, I'm in Miami. Give me something, a staycation, right? Sometimes we're here with the kids over a long weekend. We wanted to, plan some things out. What should we do? And I popped it in there, and sure enough, bam, it just, gave me this massive agenda, as busy as you want to be in some of the key areas. So it's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and I think that's when most people, because this is a new thing, they start to ask questions by a place they know. They go, all
Yeah,
right,
to see how good it is.
you
Yeah.
know everything. Surely you'll know, where to go for happy hour or what the best dive bar is or coolest parks for families. And they ask about the place that's near them that they know all about already. And then I think when that gives answers that they're very familiar with, they're like, damn, that's pretty good. Okay, now let's talk about a weekend trip. And then pretty soon they're like, all right, I'm planning an anniversary with my wife to Italy. And then we kind of like
Right.
change the behavior. We've seen that also with flights, itineraries, hotels. One of the kind of big shortcomings of AI in the beginning was that it didn't have access to real time information for flights, hotels, Airbnbs, currency conversion, weather. So we've plugged all of that in. And now people, instead of like searching, going to like Kayak or Skyscanner directly or a different website, they're just asking Guide Geek, hey, what are the best flights from, Miami to Curacao on these dates? Bam, we give best, fastest, cheapest options,
Oh,
and then
wow.
they can click through and book those if they want. But just piping in all that real time information's been huge.
Oh man, that's incredible. Yeah, right, because it's a language model. It wasn't necessarily looking at real time data, and now it is, especially that all that variable data. It gets pretty complicated. So my nephew is a type 1 diabetic. So his dietary restrictions are pretty strict, right?
Yeah.
How does that play into planning?
Yeah, we've got tons of people who travel with dietary restrictions or disabilities, or people who are pet moms and dads. They want to travel with their dog. They can't go to any restaurant. They can't stay at any hotel. So Guide Geek is actually the most powerful when you're really specific. So you can say, "Hey, build me a foodie focused itinerary to Mexico City with breakfast, lunch, and dinner out, but I'm vegan, or I
Or
have this
gluten
dietary
free?
restriction, or I love seafood more than anything else in the world." Base like all of the dinners around 5-star seafood restaurants. Like it will have incredible answers to really specific queries like that. In fact, one of our first users on the first day when we opened it up, we shared this thing with a couple of our influencers. on social and immediately started getting thousands of users a day. One of our first users that really kind of blew me away was someone who said, "Hey, I'm going to DC for 3 days. Build me a custom itinerary. I'm traveling with my daughter who's autistic." It
Oof.
instantly, within 3 seconds, had a full itinerary. It knew all of the sensory sensitive hours of every single museum in DC. It had thought about and worked out all these sort of like other outdoor experiences and other experiences all over DC that it thought an autistic child might enjoy. Because again, it's read every single review on the internet. It's watched every video. It's got all, and in those reviews, the needle in the haystack, someone has mentioned traveling with their autistic child, and it just plucks, that context out of the entire internet and packages it in within 2 seconds into a custom itinerary for someone else who's having that experience or trying to plan for that trip. So it just shows you that how powerful this is, and how much the travel world has needed a technology like this.
And so you mentioned working with some influencers. Who are the travel influencers in the space that are really making a splash?
Yeah, I mean, we part of our network in Matador Network is we have two groups. We have 1,000-person ambassador team. So these are like the super elite travel influencers of the world. These are folks with hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. And then the real network is our creator network, which is about 70,000 people. So if we
Wow.
want a city guide on Paris, we don't have an American write that city guide or research it. We actually work with creators who live in Paris. And so it's been a great tool for us to spread the word about Guide Geek. One guy is sort of like a standout for us. We actually have a ton of new influencer content launching in the next couple of weeks that I'm really excited about. Um, but a couple, we've got like a young TikToker named Adam Boro who he makes videos just like super spontaneous. He goes to the airport and books his flight on Guide Geek on the way to the airport, lets Guide Geek choose where he's going, and then goes and has a spontaneous 3-day adventure. And then we actually have an entire show, and we're launching a podcast called No Fixed Address, and No Fixed Address follows a creator named Michael Motametti, who I discovered he kind of like sold everything, his house, his cars. He went to travel permanently with his wife, and he has a really young daughter. And they started
Wow.
in Mexico City, and their idea was to spend 1 month in every destination. And when we partnered with him, we're like, you should actually let Guy Geek decide everything from where you're going to eat breakfast to the entire next country you're going to go live in.
Oh
And
my
so
god.
he is now, his name's Michael Motametti, and he's basically on this world tour powered by Guide Geek now. And in every single video, he's like, "So I need to get a haircut." So of course I asked Guide Geek. Or he's like, "We're in the mood for tapas." So he's been to like Mexico City, Barcelona, Paris, Montenegro. Uh, I think they're in. Oh, then they went to Maldives, and now they're in Bali. And every
Jeez.
place they go, they're kind of like, when they're like nearing the end of the month, they go, "All right, Guide Geek, we're in the mood for a beach vacation. Where should we go?" And like they literally just go with whatever it says, and that's where they move for the next month. So it's definitely a fun way
Wow.
to see just how powerful and versatile Guide Geek is as a platform, because he's using it to make literally every decision.
That's incredible. What what a way to live, especially
So
with
that,
with
yeah,
a
that's
young
called
kid.
No Fixed Address, and we're actually even doing like we're using our production studio. We're shooting like 22-minute episodes. We've got one in Slovenia coming out, and we're going to continue shooting with them. And they're also just starting up a podcast in terms of like the people that they've met because of Guide Geek, which is kind of amazing. Like it is, in a lot of ways, it's AI. It's the opposite of
Yeah.
human, right?
Yep.
But the AI is leading them to bars and restaurants and
To
places that
connect
they
with other
never would have
humans.
found without it. And then they're like forging human connections and making human friends that they probably never would have found without Guide Geek. So I think a lot of people in travel is like, oh, but it's AI, it's not human. I would encourage people to explore using it because chances are you're actually going to end up with a bunch of new friends that you never otherwise would have met.
Is there a way for a traveler to go on Guide Geek and to say, "Hey, who in the Matador network is in Bali that I can connect with?"
That's a really good question. We don't have that feature yet, but I think one of the things that we're really excited about is connecting. We're a massive owner of content, so especially like video content. We have 10 million followers on TikTok, for instance. We have at Matador Network and also another brand called Visit. So at Visit on Instagram or at Visit on TikTok, and we've amassed like all this amazing vertical video. So pretty soon you're going to say, "Hey, Guide Geek, what are the coolest waterfalls that I can swim under in Bali?" And right now, Guide Geek will tell you that list, but pretty soon it's going to say, "Here's the list. Would you
It's just
like to
the
watch
pictures,
a video montage
videos.
of these waterfalls?" And you say, like,
Wow.
"Hell yeah." And that will actually connect you to also the creator who shot some of those videos. So
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be long before we're also connecting real time data to like other people, guides, locals, or other travelers who are in that destination. So I like that idea.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's so fun. It really feels like you're not lost when you're traveling, and you always have somebody that can help you out there with the AI. That really feels like a friend.
Yeah.
And so, what's next now? Where do you see this going? I mean, I've spoken to a lot of folks in the AI space, and it's accelerating at such a rapid clip and just accelerating exponentially. I was talking to a gentleman who started the AI Trust Council out in Las Vegas with the idea of creating a trust council of a number of people in a number of different industries to say, okay, how do we do we control it somehow? Is there a way to control it, or is this like the internet where it's just it's just going to be open and who knows where it's going?
I think we need to be really careful with this, to be honest with you. I have now been working with this technology day in and day out with our engineering team for, as I said, like over 11 months, almost a year, which doesn't sound like very long, but given how fast it's moving and how intensely, we've been working on this new ride with AI and Guide Geek, we've learned a great deal. And one of the first things I learned was that the more sort of complex and sophisticated the model is, the language model, the harder it is to control. So you can put, guardrails and say, do this, don't do that. And conventional wisdom, when you first approach it, you think like, all right, if it's more sophisticated, it's going to listen to our guardrails. It's going to obey our orders or our prompt. But in fact, in practice, it's going to actually have more of a mind of its own and go against those guardrails or through those guardrails with the newer, more sophisticated models. So think about that, right? Like built
Wow,
out a couple years as these things are going towards AGI,
becomes
which is
unruly.
where it surpasses total human intelligence and it becomes very quickly much smarter than humans. I think we need to be very, very careful in terms of, um, how we sort of like let this genie out of the bottle. There's a chance that it gets increasingly difficult to put back in the bottle. So I like to think of travel and Guide Geek is a harmless enclave of AI. We're just getting
Hmm.
people the right information that they're looking for much faster and easier. It's a free tool. It's not super. There's not a lot of risks associated with it, like there are with AGI, like starting wars or spreading misinformation or
Right.
starting businesses that put humans out of business or something like that. But in general, I think we need to be very careful with the technology, for sure, because it is moving uncomfortably fast. I wish the overall space would maybe just slow down just a little bit, because it's the advancement of the technology is just like it's hard to even fathom right now.
Yeah, yeah. No, and then companies are still have their, the pedal to the floor because they don't want to get passed up by a competitor, or they want to find out more information about them and give themselves a competitive edge. But hopefully it's not like a runaway train that's going off a cliff at some point. We
Yeah, I
don't
mean, I
see it.
think it could be really positive for humanity and
Yeah.
certainly for business. I mean, we think when ChatGPT first came out, I think everyone like at least what I thought was like, oh wow, this is like the new Google. Everyone's going to come here for everything. And the more that we've worked with it, the more we think that increasingly over the next like 2 to 3 years, every single business, every tourism board, every hotel brand, every airline, just talking about our world of travel,
Mm-hmm.
will ultimately want to have their own AI
Right.
that's based not only on their brand and their name, but also their likeness, their sensitivities, their strengths and weaknesses, their content, their website. And so that is our business model for Guide Geek. We're keeping Guide Geek free for 100% of travel consumers forever, but we're actually using our best in class technology to help the tourism boards, hotels, airlines all launch their own branded AIs, because it's really like a brand new way that they can reach and influence travelers.
Right.
So I think we're actually launching a bunch of them in February, and we'll be having, these will be launching these like custom AIs all powered by our platform in the next couple months.
As we wrap up this fantastic episode featuring Ross Borden, the founder and CEO of Guide Geek, I want to leave you with 3 lessons that I heard from this episode. The first one is around embracing the transformative power of travel. Allow yourself to explore the world and immerse yourself in different cultures, because traveling is not about visiting new places and taking a selfie. It's about personal growth and new perspectives gained through these experiences. So be open to adventures. Let them shape your understanding of the world and yourself. The second lesson is around leveraging technology to enhance your experiences. So in the context of travel, this can mean using AI, digital tools such as Guide Geek and others to plan and optimize your trips. Embrace these innovations as they can significantly enhance the quality and convenience of your experience, whether it's in travel or in any other field. The third lesson is around practical entrepreneurship. Start small, think big. When starting a new venture, focus on building a sustainable business model rather than chasing immediate, large-scale success. Because bootstrapping and started with limited resources can actually be advantageous. It teaches you to be resourceful, make smart decisions, and grow your business organically. Patience and perseverance, coupled with a realistic approach to growth, can lead to long-term success and stability. Thank you for tuning in to Game Changers Live, where inspiration meets innovation. As we close today's chapter, remember your journey has the power to rewrite the rules and transform the game. Stay curious, stay courageous, and who knows, the next game-changing story we share might just be yours. Dream, dare, and do. Until we meet again on Game Changers. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.